Let's do this.
Start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Sound the alarms. All hands on deck, Dave. All hands on deck. We are officially reaching the turning point of the Dolphins' 2019 season. This week, Dave, impacts the trajectory of this franchise for probably the next decade, Dave. Fear is amongst us. Sunday's home game against the Washington Redskins is tanked for Tua Bowl 1. There will be a number 2, Cincinnati Bengals, December 22nd. The battle of the winless teams, the 0-5 Washington Redskins, who just fired their head coach, Jay Gruden, and the 0-4 Miami Dolphins coming off a bye week, Dave. There will be ramifications and consequences for the winner of this game, Dave.
For the next decade, Omar?
For the next decade. I am Omar Kelly, Sentinel columnist. Dave Hyde is joining me here. This is X's and Omar, where we talk about the important issues. And right now, this season, this week, there is no issue more important than whether or not you want the Miami Dolphins to win. Dave?
Look, they're so far down the road to awful, they might as well just go all the way down the road. To me, the joy and the historical importance of winning one game is not greater than the need for the number 1 pick right now and to get your choice of quarterbacks. I'm not all in on Tua like you. I want the process to play out. Do your homework. Find that maybe that's Tua. I'm not saying it's not, but you're all in on Tua already.
Listen, Dave. We have been down this road before.
Well, there's only so many roads we can go down with this season.
No, I'm talking about in the history and the course of this franchise. Let me bring up my vivid memories of 2011. I don't know where you stood on the suck for luck.
You do know, Omar. You do know.
You were on board for
because I was telling you suck for luck at the time, and you were a football purist.
I was dead set adamantly against it, and when you look at that team and the dynamics of that team, I argue, and I will continue to argue, the 2011 Dolphins, they were the most talented Dolphins team that I have covered. Now, yes, they started the season 0-5. A lot of that had to do with the lockout that prevented them from really installing a new offense. And
you mean most talented quarterback aside?
Yes, most talented, just talent-wise.
Okay.
Yes, it did not have the engine in terms of the quarterback. Chad Henne was a starting quarterback. You know how I feel about the robot. He was not very good. But you're talking about Brandon Marshall, Reggie Bush, Richie Incognito, Mike Pouncey, and then Charles Clay, a young Charles Clay. We all know that those are high-level players. Then on defense, let me give you the defense, Dave. Randy Starks, Paul Soliai, Cameron Wake, Jason Taylor. That's your defensive line. All Pro Bowlers. You got Carlos Dansby, Kevin Barnett as your linebackers. Then I'm going to give you the safeties. Rashad Jones, a Jeremiah Bell, Vontae Davis, a young Sean Smith, a Will Allen. That would be a hell of a defense, wouldn't it, Dave?
It was a pretty good defense at the time, too.
At the time, it was a pretty good defense. You got playmakers on offense, but they had a bad quarterback. Started 0-7. Eventually, Chad Henne gets injured. Matt Moore comes in. He wins 6 of 9 games.
He blew it. He blew that. And the Colts were in the same position, essentially, and they just kept losing.
Yeah,
they knew it. They had a game plan.
They turned the switch off, Dave.
Of course, they also showed you my fear in all this of losing, which is if you're not smart enough to draft a quarterback without the number 1 pick, you're not smart enough to build around the quarterback you get. And the Colts proved that out, and that's why Andrew Luck retired. And we'll see what happens with the Dolphins.
I think Andrew Luck retired, and this is because the passion wasn't there, and he got tired of battling injuries.
Why was he injured, though? Because he kept getting battered around those first 5 years of his career.
Okay, but the Colts have one of the best offensive lines. They had it last year too.
But remember, they changed their GM. Right now, Ryan Ballard came in 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, and he's been a great GM. Before the first 5 years of Andrew Luck's career,
he got battered and bruised. So yes. Building around the quarterback is important, and we will discuss that no matter who the quarterback is. Yes, this offensive line, they've got to be rebuilt. But you need the engine to make the car go. And that's what this game is all about, Dave. Do you want to be the lead dog in that selecting number 1, or do you want to give the baton to the Washington Redskins?
Omar, it's a marathon. It's not a race. Let's not overvalue this one game, but I'm with you. This was a game. You got to take them one loss at a time, one bad play at a time, and hopefully you come out with the loss out
One
of this game.
second quarter tank at a time.
1 second half, 81 to nothing at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. 81 to nothing. I mean, that alone speaks
Look,
volumes.
when you look at these rosters, Washington is a much more talented roster than the Dolphins. Now, it hasn't played out for them on the field, and maybe it won't again, but there's a reason Vegas has them as 3.5 dog favorites.
Well, let's get to our first question, which comes from Garth Edwards, who asks, I've heard you and Dave both say the coaching staff is 100% here next year. They've been dealt a poor hand, but surely they have to justify their status, not through wins, but signs of player improvement. Where is the bar set, Dave?
Well, I don't know where to set the bar, to be honest with you, but I'm with you. Individuals have to improve. We have to come back in December and say, pick a name. A Christian Wilkins has to say, okay, now I see what he did this year. And there's a handful of players out there like that. But where the bar's set and how you judge this coaching staff is a little hard for me to do, considering what we've been talking about. We expect them to go 0-16. I expect them to go 0-16.
You were the first one that was predicting 0-16.
So let's not.
I thought that was a little bit far-fetched until I started to see the product on the field.
So let's not pretend now that you want to see results. You want to see players improvement. I'm with you on that.
I do want to see good schemes, good game plans. I've brought it up and really been uncomfortable with what I've seen primarily on the defensive standpoint. I mean, you're looking at some 2nd and 19s backed into the end zone, and you're rushing 3, if 4, dropping 7 men behind the first down marker. Like, what are you doing? How are you playing? Yes, you've got struggles on defensive ends and issues with pass rushing, but to not blitz, especially with how we've seen Jerome Baker blitz effectively, it's not acceptable. What I'm seeing from a defensive standpoint, yes, you got Josh Rosen as your starting quarterback. I understand you're very limited in what you can do.
Josh Rosen is the least of your problems on offense right now. He is the least. You have an offensive line that can't block anybody. You have receivers.
Better.
The receivers drop 4 balls a game, and you're talking about Josh Rosen being a problem.
No tight end. I get you got a lot of issues, but I'm saying in terms of what you're putting on the quarterback's plate.
Oh, I get it.
You can't ask him to do tremendous amount of things. You're not asking him to make 3 reads before he throws the ball. So I get it, but sometimes you can build to plays where you're max protecting and taking a big shot. And I don't see them doing that enough. I don't see that. Yes, they helped against the Chargers in terms of getting Isaiah Prince some protection, some help. But I don't see them doing that enough if you got a struggling
Omar,
offensive
they had
line.
a play the last game where they max protected. They kept the back end, they kept 2 tight ends in, they put 1 receiver out, and he got sacked. I mean, in a normal count. It wasn't like, he's holding the ball. So, again, I don't know how you judge the coaches in a season like this. Arturo asked, Omar, Dolphins clearly need a lot of fixing come next season, but what positions are you okay with the Dolphins not make any changes at?
Right now, based on what I'm seeing so far, I like the pieces at linebacker. Jerome Baker, while he has not played to the level of expectations that I had for him, I like what he's doing. Right now, hard to say that anybody outside of maybe Xavier Howard is playing better than Raekwon McMillan. Yes, he's limited in terms of what they're asking him to do. They're making him a run-specific linebacker, but he's also setting the edge. He's playing pass rush. He's being effective in terms of positive plays when he's on the field. I know I don't know how you feel about analytics. I'm not a huge fan of it, but
I like all information, and that provides information.
But analytically, Raekwon McMillan is one of the highest performing players, and I'm starting to see him trigger faster and read and diagnose plays better. He credits Kiko Alonso for a lot of help in terms of understanding what's going on, and you're starting to see him. Remember, last season was his rookie season, was his real rookie season, and he's starting to play better, and you're seeing that development. So Raekwon, Sam Eguavoen, Jerome Baker, that's probably the only unit that I would say, hey, you don't drastically need to upgrade it. I mean, but everything else
I got to tell you, Omar, I look at the roster, who they're playing, and other than Xavier Howard, Bobby McCain, and, Rashad didn't look very good the last game.
Not.
Okay. I don't even know where they have average talent right now across the board.
That's fine.
So when you're saying where are we going to upgrade, I say where can you get a great player? And if you can draft a great player at any position right now, you're drafting
Not
them.
only draft, but free agency.
Free
if you
agent.
can sign a great player, if a Melvin Gordon is out there in free agency, he's not tagged, and you can sign him, let's say, for $8-9 million, I'm not sure, why wouldn't you do that if he's willing to come here? You just need to add playmakers to your team. 72 Silky wants to know, what's your consolation prize if we don't get the number 1 pick and Tua is gone before Miami selects him?
Well, I'm going to try to be consistent on this. There's a lot of work to be done on these quarterbacks. There's a lot of college season, postseason, camps, combines, and all that. And everybody wants an answer now. In reality, all the scouts that I've talked to, meaning in the past month now, 4 people who do this type of work, say it's too early. And anybody coming to an answer now, you don't want to come to an answer now because you're going to close your mind down to all the information that's coming later. So, but there are options. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there.
At some point, LSU's Joe Burrow will face off against Tua Tagovailoa, and maybe LSU dethrones Alabama, and maybe that can alter the landscape, in my opinion. An important game that I watched last week, because I generally do not watch college football, but because this season I have to watch.
Omar's been dragged into Saturday afternoon.
I have been dragged into Saturday afternoon football. I generally don't watch college football until December when it's bowl season and I know what prospects to look at. But this year, last week, it was Love, the Utah quarterback, versus Burrow. And Love, who a lot of people were talking about him being probably the second best quarterback prospect in this draft, he pooped. He pooped on himself.
He's got an awful team around him.
He does have an awful team around him. But he was facing a really good defense.
Yeah, and this gets back to, judging everything that scouts look at, which is get them to the combines, take everything into view. Yeah. And look, you go back to Dan Marino, had an awful senior year. He dropped from my high draft pick to the Dolphins being able to take him in the 20s. And so let's not overvalue one game or one.
Well, hold on here.
You're going to overvalue one game.
Hold on here. There are talented players. Chase Young from Ohio State. He is considered the best pass rusher in this draft. There's another guy from Iowa. That's another issue and another position that you're probably going to have to address. It's going to be a hard position for you to address. Pass rusher and quarterback are probably
two tackles.
2 tackles.
You got to build a line for this. You got to build a line for this quarterback.
But Georgia's Jake Fromm, he's a young quarterback, dude. I'm very interested in watching his development and progression. The SEC has 3 quarterbacks that are probably going to be first-round picks, and I know which one I love already. It's not even a debate. I fell in love with Tua watching him struggle versus Georgia and versus Clemson. Those are the games that I fell in love with. I looked at him and I was like, this is the worst that you've played? I'll take that. Like, this is you bad? I want that.
Well, you also have to factor in, if we're going down this road, 6-foot quarterback.
Yes.
And
durability issues.
Okay, there's a lot of issues. We'll have all this
we'll
talk
have
about
until May to talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, OG Highway has a good one, Omar. How important will veteran leadership be next season?
Veteran leadership is important every single season. Now, of course, it starts with the quarterback. That position has to be your leader. But when you're in a situation where you don't have a quarterback, it is what it is. Xavier Howard, Bobby McCain, Daniel Kilgore, those are the veterans of this team. Now, can they right the ship? Daniel Kilgore is doing the best that he can to hold back a line that's probably going to be working on their 5th combination in 5 games. That's really what you're dealing with when you trade away the best player and you've got 2 injuries that cost you starters. But this is normal protocol for offensive line, has it not been?
It has been, but it's exaggerated this season.
Yeah. It's a little exaggerated this season, but you got to deal with injuries. Evan Brome played well. DeMarcus Webb played well at left tackle, and that's something that I would really consider moving him from right tackle to left tackle.
Richmond Webb's cousin. Maybe some of the, can we hope?
Yeah. But your young players, really to me, Bobby McCain and Xavier Howard, they've just got to be positive influences in the locker room. hold guys up, hold guys accountable, hold guys to a certain standard. One's battling an injury, and the other, he's got no pass rush, so he can't. He handles the toughest assignment every single week in terms of handling the best receiver with no pass rush. People could double move him to death, but he's got to stay positive in this situation. And even though it's hard, hey, that's what your role is as a leader.
He's signed a big contract.
Hey.
At least he has that going for him to be happy about, right?
Definitely. All the guys that they've expected, even Jesse Davis.
Okay, Omar, let's go down this road. Philadelphia, Kansas City looking for cornerbacks. The Dolphins have traded everybody. Cornerbacks.
It would cost me. You would have to give me 2 first-round picks for me to trade Xavier Howard. I've already paid the bill for Xavier Howard in terms of the $15 million I gave him this year. That's worth a draft pick in itself.
I'm with you.
He's an elite talent. That's worth if you offer 2 first-round draft picks, I would consider
But
it.
here's my problem. Of all the guys they've traded, the guys that you thought were going to be building blocks,
Yes.
Xavier Howard should have been the first one. He's 26. He'll be 30 by the
first
time
one
they're any
what,
good.
moved?
Just from an age standpoint, not a talent standpoint, he's going to be 30 by the time they can challenge for anything.
I agree with you from the standpoint, Tunsil. It's hard to justify that trade because it's going to be hard to find.
Well, you got a lot in return, so that's how you justify it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you offer 2 first-round picks for Xavier Howard, that's a lot in return. The problem is, I've got him locked up. It's a hard position to find. I'm not making that deal. The difference with Tunsil and Xavier is I didn't have Tunsil locked up. And Tunsil's going to want to be the highest paid left tackle in the NFL. Xavier, I got him locked up. I got him signed. So unfortunately, you're here. Or fortunately, depending on how you want to see it. But the question is, can you stay motivated and hungry and driven when you know you got no chance every single week?
Or about week 8, do they shut him down and say,
absolutely.
come back next year because you don't get hurt? We don't want you to get hurt.
The last thing you want to do is risk an ACL tear with Xavier. So definitely, if you want to shut him down around mid-season, go for it.
Or week 5.
Well, the Washington Redskins have probably been the only franchise during this era of football that has been just a tad bit more dysfunctional than the Miami Dolphins. They haven't had Bullygate or some other scandal, but their ownership situation with Daniel Snyder, the meddling owner, it's infamous that Daniel Snyder is a meddling owner. Bruce Allen, who is just the executive that will never go anywhere because he serves as a buffer for Daniel Snyder. It's pretty clear that this organization is dysfunctional. They just fired their head coach, Jay Gruden. Whacked him. That was probably the most predictable thing.
5 o'clock in the morning, though. Of all the,
he's supposed to be at work at 5 o'clock in the morning.
5 o'clock. You call him into the office at 5 o'clock. I mean, the worst thing is they don't fire him, and he's sitting there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and think, what do I do for a couple hours? I mean, right?
Oh, you think if like he started working and they fired him at 10? At least he didn't have to put in the work of breaking down the film and all that kind of stuff. I was surprised Jay Gruden lasted that long. That is the longest tenured coach under Daniel Snyder, and he's had a ton of coaches. We're talking Spurrier.
They've done the same route that the Dolphins have, where they hire the guy you think, oh, this guy will work, Spurrier. You know, the Parcells and all that idea.
Joe
Gibbs comes back. Mike Shanahan was there. And then they go the unproven young guy with the offensive mind of Jay Gruden.
And the funny thing is, some of his offensive assistants are some of the hottest coaches in the league right now.
But their problems are the same as the Dolphins. Bad drafts, bad signings, just bad ownership on the football side. Because I always say, look, the Dolphins are first class everywhere, but the place people look at.
I don't put Steve Ross and Daniel Snyder in the same conversation because Steve Ross is not a meddling owner. He's an owner who opens up his wallet and says, what do you need? How much money is it going to cost me? I mean, Chris Greer, and this is what makes me struggle with this offseason's, we got $120 million of cap space. Yeah, Steve Ross is going to be like, okay, who can I buy? Who can I buy? Who can I buy? And Chris Greer's responsibility is to be like, calm down. Unfortunately, Chris Greer is basically saying, we're going to spend. We're going to be dealers, wheelers, and dealers. So that's more into Steve Ross's lane, but here's the thing. The difference between Daniel Snyder and Steve Ross is Snyder meddles. Dwayne Haskins is Snyder's pick, and the coaches just had to deal with it. If Steve Ross had his pick, Lamar Jackson would be the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. and that wouldn't be too bad of a thing.
It'd be an option. You're looking for options.
I mean, hey, but it's one meddles, one doesn't. I would prefer the owner who doesn't meddle. Rick Morgan wants to know, what's Trent Williams worth in draft stock if we lose on Sunday? Is it worth giving up one of our first-round picks for an offensive tackle who is a proven commodity in the league?
That's a great question that I pondered week 1.
Yeah.
Before all this came out. And you also have to factor in, does Trent Williams want to come here?
That's true.
Okay, I mean, a 31-year-old.
Who doesn't want to live in Miami full time?
Anybody who doesn't want to go 0-16 at age 31 in their 9th year in the league.
All right.
That's why.
That's a valid point.
Okay, so what is Trent Williams? He's definitely. Look, if you gave him a number 1 pick,
I'm not
would
paying a
take
number
him.
1 pick for a 31-year-old.
I was going to say they would take him in a second.
I'm not paying a number 1
Right.
pick. I would pay a number 2.
That would be a great move for the Dolphins to lock up
Absolutely.
for the next 5 years. You have the best
4.
left. Well, okay, 4 years, the best left tackle in football right now. And
week 2, I was considering, hey, the Dolphins should really offer up a second-round pick for Trent Williams. He's 31. He's going to make $9.2 million this season, $12.75 next season. It's a respectable number. You're talking $21 million for a reliable left.
That's a great number.
That's a bargain.
Jeremy Tunsil is going to get double that.
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying he might go for a number 1 pick just from the money. You throw in the money too.
Age-wise, but when somebody on Twitter brought it up to me, do you really want to stabilize your offensive line this season? Or do you want to stabilize it next season? I think I'll stabilize it next season.
We're
Just
halfway.
me.
Well, he's not going to be ready till week 9.
I don't know. He's
Week
a left
8?
tackle. He could probably block in his sleep. I mean, he could probably pass set in his sleep.
Well, I would think there'd be other teams. Here's the amazing. You talk about dysfunction of the Redskins. They aren't trading him. What are they doing?
Yeah,
what are they
absolutely.
doing?
No. And I can understand his position because he feels like the organization medically compromised his health.
Which tells you, again, the complete dysfunction of the.
There is,
Of course, the Dolphins did have a guy who wanted out of here too.
Yeah. They made sure he got moved, but that's because he can sort of slander the organization to an important quarterback who shall not be mentioned right now. We'll mention him later.
All right, Omar. Kickboxing trainer asks, Dolphins win Sunday, what's plan B?
Well, Dave, I'm very uncomfortable with this plan B option because I'm kind of in the all-in category on Tua. I don't need to see any more. I just need him to finish the season healthy. If he gets hurt, then I'll panic. If the Dolphins start winning, then I'll panic. But Chase Young is going to be a very promising and talented pass rusher. That's going to be very hard for this organization to find and address. And we can always...
I'll tell you what plan B is when you present it that way. It's the Cleveland Browns. They took Myles Garrett with the number 1 pick. And they had, how many years later did they take how many years have they been wandering through the desert?
Yes, and they're still wandering.
That's
through the desert.
That's why I say this is the last refuge of dumb franchises. This is what they do because they can't do anything else. But it scares me. You keep Tua and Andrew. Tua isn't the sure thing Andrew Luck was, Omar.
No, he is. Yes,
he's not 6'5".
Yes, he is. No, okay, fine. He's not 6'5", but there are things that he does that cannot be taught.
I love some things he does, right.
But things that he does that cannot be taught. The back shoulder throws, the slant passes that he throws, the ability to evade pocket. But let's not. There's Trevor Lawrence, who's out there. He's a Clemson quarterback. He beat Tua in the national championship game.
You want to go 0-32 to have a shot?
I do not want to go 0-32.
It's painful enough just to get through this season.
But there are also some free agent options, Dave. There are going to be some free agent options, some trade
Who?
options. Dak Prescott.
Who?
I'm just saying, Dak.
Do you give Dak Prescott $30 million?
I might have to give him $35 million. I think Dak Prescott keeps you relevant. Keeps you. He's a top 15 quarterback. He keeps you relevant. Now you've got Nick Foles, who's out there. He's got his money already from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Here's
a better question if we're going to Jacksonville, right?
Yeah.
How did Gardner Minshew fall to 6th round? Look, all these teams are desperate for franchise quarterbacks, right? And I'm not jumping the gun and saying he's the next Tom Brady, but he has shown signs that you love
That's
in the
something-
first few
something to
weeks.
build around.
Something was there.
Look at
And how
Carolina.
could not people have seen that?
Look at Carolina as a perfect example of what can happen if you just get adequate quarterback play. Because I'm not of the opinion that Cam Newton was healthy before the Liz Frank injury. I watched some of those games, and Cam Newton is pushing every pass because I believe his shoulder is shot. They keep winning with the.
Well, they have Christian McCaffrey, who was like is unbelievable
very talented.
this season.
But you can take a team only so far without adequate, efficient quarterback play, and these are perfect examples of this. Chris Morena wants to know, after front-loading heavy in guaranteed front-loaded heavy and guaranteed money contracts, the way to lure free agents in 2020. That way, the Dolphins aren't trapped under free agent contracts like they've been the last few decades. Let me start by addressing this. The Dolphins have not been trapped by free agent contracts in the last few decades. Yes, they've signed some contracts, but understand, whatever length you sign the contract to, the contract is really only as long as the guaranteed money is. So once, like I give you a perfect example, Albert Wilson, guaranteed money is done this season.
So they're done with it. They're done of financially being burdened by him or having to keep him.
It's an option opt-in year. Do you want to pay Albert Wilson $8 million? Do you not want to pay Albert Wilson $8 million? They have to see $8 million worth of production, and they'll decide that. Jeff Ireland has been, and I know people hate when I bring up Jeff Ireland because everything he did in this organization was incompetent in people's minds.
It was not in people's mind. It was incompetent. Let's not put flavoring over what he did. It was awful here.
That 2011 team, the teams had a solid foundation. The quarterbacks were horrible.
60% of a GM's job is getting the right quarterback.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. He went too far and too long in these Chad Henne and Ryan Tannehill investments. No argument there. But the talent around the team was pretty decent. But he would do 3-year deals. The first two's guaranteed. The third year's an opt-out year. I think that's fair and respectable. And I think they'll offer the same things. Even if you look at some of these big money deals that the Jets paid players like
Lavonte Bell or C.J. Mosley.
Yeah, I mean, those deals are really 3-year deals.
Right.
The nature of the NFL has to change to the point where guaranteed money gets real. But
I will caution, from now to March 8th or whenever the free agent signing, don't get too excited over free agents.
No.
Look at the Jets. They sign these huge names in free agency. They're winless.
I say this all the time, and I get in an issue. I get bothered when fans are like, "Oh, we'll have $120 million. Oh, if we purge the roster, we'll have $150 million in cap space." I'm like, you can't even spend $80 million.
Right.
And I've looked at the free agent landscape. Until players get cut, it's barren. And I can promise you, there are probably about 5 or 6 free agents that I would actually like the Dolphins to sign. And I promise you, at least 4 of them will be re-signed by the time they get to the point where they hit free agency.
Right.
And the others will be overpaid, drastically overpaid.
It's time to play Omar's favorite game. That's what it says here, Omar's favorite. He
It is my
wrote the
favorite game.
script, so it must be. True or false? You know how it's played. Question. Scott Jennings wants to know, true or false, Omar, Jerome Baker is not living up to the preseason hype?
That has to be true. I expected Jerome Baker, not only is this defense built around him, but I expected him to be the top sack producer, the top pass rusher. I expected him to be an effective blitzer. I haven't seen one blitz yet. That one blitz that's good yet.
You know, and maybe the expectations were set in a weird place from the moment Brian Flores walked in the door. They made him the leader.
They handed him the keys.
They said, "You're calling the plays." In the first meet, before he'd been on a field, before they'd done any work with him, you're going to call the plays. You're essentially the leader of our defense. And for a second-year player,
he wasn't even ready for it.
He wasn't ready for that. And so maybe things got way out ahead of. You know, he's a good player. He has a chance.
The roles, I think, are a little bit mixed up. And I think you have to start revisioning this defense now because you had in mind Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to be our tight end coverage specialist when Chris Greer drafted Jerome Baker to be your tight end coverage specialist.
Right.
And now Jerome Baker is also your best blitzer. The roles have to be changed. He cannot be the leader of this defense and cover the tight ends, also be the blitzer. There's too much on his plate. Minimize some of it. Get him to the point where he can do one thing effectively and then build from there. And right now, we're not at the point where he's doing one thing effectively.
All right, true or false, Omar? Kevin Beal wants to know, Miami drafts Alabama receiver Jerry Jeudy to pair with Tua. He's projected the top 10 pick, and the Steelers are currently 1-4.
I don't know if Miami's going to be drafting high enough to get Judy. He is a very talented player. I think he's going to be a top 5 selection. I absolutely love him, but there are 4 wide receivers on Alabama.
I was going to say Alabama. Take your pick of.
You got Henry Ruggs III. I mean, yes, when I draft Tua, I'm going to make sure I get him one of his offensive linemen, and I'm going to make sure I get him one of his wide receivers. It's Tua, whatever you want.
I don't know what Omar's going to do if they don't take Tua.
Listen, I'm going to be in a state of depression for a little while. And I'm going to be optimistic and hope that Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert, takes us out of the abyss. We talk about the 2011 draft class. Russell Wilson was the best quarterback in that draft class. Russell Wilson is a Hall of Fame talent.
It tells you how hard for guys who live and breathe and wake up at 3 in the morning thinking about foot movement and all this stuff, how hard it is to judge quarterbacks, evidently.
You loved Russell Wilson.
I love Russell Wilson.
You would have drafted Russell Wilson in the first round.
My son went to Wisconsin. I watched all the Russell Wilson games, and Burt Bielema, the coach, would run the ball into the line for 3.5 quarters, and then hand the ball to Russell Wilson, you go win it for us. And he would every time. And I said, this guy is great. And all we heard was how small he was.
I will tell you a story. I'll tell you 2 stories about Russell Wilson that really taught me what I needed to know about the fact that size really doesn't matter, and also
to a degree.
For a player. This is the first story. I'm at the Senior Bowl. Russell Wilson is there, and guess who I see and sit and watch practice with? Pat White. After he had been released and had this disappointing, the Senior Bowl is where it all started because Bill Parcells had gone there to see Pat White. This is a great story of mine. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking about him. And Pat White convinces me I was too small to play in the NFL.
And not to take Russell Wilson.
No. And then we go on the field. Me and Pat White, we walk together, go on the field, and he's wants to introduce himself to Russell Wilson, who says, man, I admired you when you were playing. Because people don't realize that Pat White changed the game for a lot of players in terms of these small players that would usually transition to wide receiver or cornerback. That were high school quarterbacks, they said, Pat White could play quarterback at West Virginia, I could play quarterback. And he's there interacting with Russell Wilson, and they're the same size. And I'm standing right there as close as I am to you, and I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. But then Pat White, I shook shook Russell Wilson's hand, and his hand was about as big as this damn paper. And I was just like, oh my God, and that really stood out to me. Hand size is important, maybe size is not so much, but Russell Wilson had the intangibles. Second story, Jeff Ireland, private conversation, me and him.
Not private anymore.
Not private anymore. Jeff Ireland was obsessed with Russell Wilson. He talked himself out of Russell Wilson to select Ryan Tannehill because of size. And his obsession, Bill Parcells' obsession.
I was going to say, that whole regime was obsessed with size.
They were.
They had their parameters for everything. And it was a hard draft. Look, every team passed on. No team thought Russell Wilson was going to be as good as he went late in the 3rd round. And that's all you need to know.
And I got this story before Russell Wilson actually started playing for the Seahawks. I don't know how the conversation came up, and I was just like, yeah, Russell Wilson's doing really well in Seattle. And he's like, I really should have did that. And I thought to myself, like, man, why do you second guess yourself out of these things? And it's like size. It's like I just didn't feel like he would, hold up in the NFL.
I see. I didn't know that. We can add him to the list. Can we add him to the list?
Jimmy Graham, T.Y. Hilton.
No. Just go with quarterbacks. It's
okay.
Virtually every Pro Bowl quarterback they could have taken.
Yeah, you could add him to the list because he really talked himself out of it to select Ryan Tannehill.
All right, Omar. True or false? Greg is asking. Tua being drafted will help free agents down the road come on board.
Absolutely. That's a true. I think it just players just need hope. Look at what happened in Cleveland this offseason because everybody was selling Baker
Oh,
Mayfield.
you mean it like in the second year?
Yeah,
You don't mean this offseason.
No, I mean this offseason. I think players.
Well, first of all,
players just want you to have a plan.
First of all, free agency is before the draft, so it's not.
Yes.
So.
But if you have the number one pick, everybody knows what you're gonna do, Dave.
Yeah, okay, I get you.
It-
I wavered
it's
a
no
little calling me
secret.
Joe. Like, what am I, Joe Rose?
Yeah. I gotta convince Joe to be on the Tua train. I don't have to convince you, but you're like
I'm
you're
on
more,
the number
you're-
one train.
You're more open-minded
I'm a little
here.
open-minded look, I get why people love Tua. I'm just keeping options open. Don't close your mind just yet, Omar.
That's fair. That's fair. Luke Fader asks, next season starting running back is currently on the Dolphins roster, Dave.
No, sir.
That's
no
a false?
chance. No chance. Because, look, Kellen Balaj, unless he does a 180 and turns everything around.
180
which
from a
we
1.5 yards per carry average.
and dropping the passes.
Yeah.
So
And he is a pass catching back.
yeah,
which is the weirdest thing.
that is weird. And as far as Kenyan Drake, he's unsigned. I assume they're going to let him go and possibly get a third, fourth round. I don't know where the compensatory
The way you're
going to
be spending and shopping this offseason, it would probably benefit you to move him now. It would probably benefit you to move him now, which leads me to my next true or false question, which comes from Burnman81. Kenyan Drake will be traded before the October 29 trade deadline.
Well, he's out there to be traded. The question is, will a team? You have to play the compensatory pick game because let's say he's worth a third round right now.
He's not worth the third round.
Okay, let's say fourth.
He's probably worth a fourth at the highest.
Let's say fourth, just for conversation's sake.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so the Dolphins need.
You're not getting a fourth round pick for him.
Oh, they have to because
No, you don't.
Omar, whoever trades for him is going to get a fourth round pick if they don't re-sign him. So his value to the Dolphins is as a fourth round pick.
I disagree with you. I think his value is as a fifth round pick. One, Kenyan Drake is not going to break the bank right now. I think he's probably in the $4 million range in terms of what you would sign him to, and probably a 3-year, $12 million deal, only 8 of it guaranteed.
Omar, if you're the Dolphins and you can get a fourth round pick, maybe even a third, okay, we'll say fourth.
No, you're not going to get a third.
Okay,
you're paying him. His contract is he's going to be
fourth round pick.
You got to
at
trade
the
him
end
to
of
a
the year,
team.
at the end of a meaningless year. You want that fourth round pick, or why trade him?
It's probably going to be a fifth round pick.
Then why trade him?
Because you need that pick.
But no, you need the fourth round pick.
You're going to spend so much money in free agency. The compensatory formula is not going to benefit you. You're going to go spend big money. You're going to make it rain in free
next
agency.
year. Next year, you're going to be hit. You'll get the picks this year, won't you?
No, you won't get the picks this year.
Okay.
But it's for a fifth round pick. I think a team like the Los Angeles Rams, who needs some help at running back, they've got Gurley, who's clearly struggling with some medical issues. I think you make that deal right now.
But here's the Rams will get a fourth round pick. They get Kenyan Drake for the last half of the year. They don't re-sign him.
Okay.
They'll get a fourth round pick. Send that to the Dolphins, and you get Kenyan Drake for free for the rest of the year. To me, that's how the trade would go.
I could see your logic. It's just a matter of whether or not you believe that Kenyan Drake is worth a fourth round pick. I like what Drake brings to the table, but there's a reason nobody views him as a starting back in the NFL.
All right. Jason Terry asks, I wonder if it's a basketball player.
No.
True or false, will Taco Charlton have another productive game against the Redskins?
He has to. There's going to be.
He doesn't have to.
Yeah,
he didn't have one for many times
So you're
in
saying
Dallas.
limit his playing time? Is it?
No, I'm just saying he doesn't have to, but
He's going to have 30 opportunities to pass rush against the Washington Redskins because, lo and behold, they're going to be in a great situation to score points. So the defense is going to be on the field, 70 snaps?
here's the staggering thing about Taco Charlton. He was cut by Dallas.
Yep.
He comes to the Dolphins. He's immediately
Immediately
their best pass rusher.
I would say right now, based on what we've seen, even though it's not been good, he's probably a top 10 player on this team. I got to really factor in the fact that, hey, he's the only person
Top
producing.
10 player?
Top 10 player, Dave.
I haven't even thought about that. If he's
he's a top 10 player on this team,
and
unfortunately.
people want to talk about halftime adjustments and all that stuff. Let's be serious.
There's
no talent on this.
guy that Dallas dumped, they basically dumped and took a dump on him, is a top 10 talent on this team right now. And clearly, without a doubt, we won't argue he's the top 15.
I don't even know how to talk about this team. When we talk about this.
I mean, and no disrespect to Taco Charlton because he was in a bad situation with
Well, maybe
Dallas.
this will kickstart his career.
Absolutely.
But whatever reason it wasn't
Look at
working in
Devontae
Dallas.
Parker. Devontae Parker, he lost his fifth-year option. They said, hey, come on back home at a reduced price. Devontae's finally healthy. He's finally productive. Sometimes desperation makes players raise the level of...
Wait. He's productive?
Why is he not? Devontae's their best receiver on this team. Strangely enough, I remember, I don't think I discussed this with you on X's Omar. I was in Dallas. It was like midnight. Was watching the Jerry Jones not Jerry Jones, the Jason Garrett coaching show. And he went on for 5 minutes about how talented Devontae Parker was.
Oh, my God. Omar, we've listened to Bill Belichick talk about the opponent for years. You're not going to pretend.
But he sold me. Athletic, can high point the
is.
ball,
He can.
fast,
He is.
Reliable in terms of
He's not
catching.
reliable.
I mean, health-wise. I mean, Devontae Parker right now, 10 receptions for 201 yards, a touchdown. I mean, you act like you got anything else on this team.
Well, no. The bar for him is he a number one receiver?
He's an NFL starter, which I'm not sure you could say that about a lot of people on this team. He's a Devontae, top 10 talent.
On the Dolphins? I'm going to go home and I'm going to have to chart this. I haven't thought about this stuff before. Uncharted waters here, Omar. Alan Corona asked, true or false, the tanking plan is not working. Excuse me, there are 4 winless teams still remaining, and now compensatory picks are in jeopardy because of injuries to Jawan James and Cameron Wake.
Yeah, the injuries factor, compensatory picks playing time doesn't factor in it, how much they contribute to their team. So yeah, we can't sit here and say, oh, we're going to get a 4th and a 5th and this and that in compensatory formula because of injuries. So that is a challenge, but ultimately the Dolphins are going to have 12 draft picks, hopefully. In terms of the winless teams, yeah, I'm a little nervous. Eventually, the Jets will get their act together. They got Sam Darnold coming back this week. We all know Adam Gase does not believe in losing games. He will, as Chris Greer said, he'd probably kill his dog if
the quarterback whisperer. He's started the quarterback. He's brought along with him, and Luke Falk and. Has he picked a good quarterback since Peyton Manning? Seriously.
You're not going to win with Luke Falk. You're not going to win with David
Who's
Fales.
developed him? Who wants
Gase.
him around?
Adam Gase.
Okay,
Adam likes to do, but Washington's got to win some games.
Omar,
Cincinnati's got to win some games.
You're putting me at ease in this show when you're saying Taco Charlton and Devontae Parker are top 10 talents on the Dolphin roster. And I knew it was awful. I knew this roster
you got to give it some serious
was
consideration.
Nothing I've ever seen before. But that sort of puts things into perspective.
I mean, I could sit here. There's not that much talent on the team. We can name 10 players.
Let's start here. How many average players are on the team right now? We got Xavier Howard, Bobby McCain,
Rashad Jones, Jesse
Jones,
Davis.
maybe.
Oh, what?
Well, he hasn't played like it this year.
Okay, he had one bad game.
Well, he's played 2.
I mean, he's coming back from injury. Like let's be patient here. Rashad is a proven playmaker.
Okay, all right.
I'm
just saying.
Phillip Rivers got the best of him. Did you see those passes Phillip Rivers threw that scored on him?
It was the running back who juked him about 3 times that made me a little nervous. Okay, I'll give you Rashad Jones.
Okay, we'll throw it in. I'll give you Preston Williams, Kenyan Drake, Jesse Davis, Daniel Kilgore. We're right there right now at the limit. Did we give Jerome Baker? Yeah, throw Jerome Baker in the pile. I'll even throw Raekwon McMillan in the pile. We're right there. We're probably like at 9, 10. I mean,
how many of those guys could start on a 8-8 team?
Half of them.
Half. So you really have 5 legitimate NFL starters. Yeah. All right, Omar. Our final question comes from Mario. True or false, this week's game isn't competitive and Miami loses by 20-plus points?
I think that's a false. I think that this week's game will be competitive, which is what makes me nervous. I think that it'll come down to second half adjustments and
oh, come on. Are you serious?
Yeah, I think it'll come down to second half adjustments.
Serious?
And how hot Josh Rosen's hand is and the caliber of protection that he's gotten from. What scares me, what encourages me about this team is the offensive line doesn't seem like it, but they're improving. They're getting better. I know it doesn't seem like it. The defensive line, they're stopping the run. They stopped the run last week.
They're last in the league against the run.
72 rushing yards against a Chargers team that came into the game averaging 5.2 yards per carry. They are getting better.
A Chargers team without 3 offensive linemen starting. Okay, just 7 offensive starters overall.
Oh, so you're saying it's catfish? I got catfish?
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that the Chargers are beat up, and they still won by 20.
If the Washington Redskins, a physical team, comes in here and they pummel the Dolphins running, then I will feel comfortable the rest of the year because that means that I don't have to worry about anybody.
And Bill, it'll be interesting because Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach, now's the interim coach, old school, and he said his number 1 priority is to run the football.
Absolutely.
What does he think this is, the 70s and 80s?
He believes in old school football, Dave, as I do.
He picked the right week to say that and to try that because the opponent and the way Washington, any average team has to do here in the heat and humidity, shorten the game. Make it keep that clock running by running the ball, and if they can do that.
I stop the run and run the football. So it's a simple formula to beat the Dolphins. They can't do anything else.
That's why I say second half adjustment. We've gone through how bad the roster is.
Yeah.
How bad these coaches have to work with, and you're saying it's second half adjustments. It's talent, pure and simple.
You could say it's talent, but they're not making good calls, and they're not making any adjustments.
Can they make any adjustment that will upgrade the talent level in the second half?
I think you can. I think that you're not exactly utilizing some of the personnel in the best fashion possible, but and especially in the defensive line, I think that they're playing too much in the first half, and which is why they basically have nothing.
They
in the
have
second half.
3 defensive tackles.
Yes.
Over 300 pounds, which in the NFL is odd.
Hey, a lot of things are odd about this Dolphins team, but it is the season that you have. Now, Dave, we got to get important for prediction time. How comfortable are you in your prediction here, Dave?
I'm pretty comfortable that I don't think the Dolphins can score. Okay, I don't think they can put up points.
They stop dropping passes, they can score.
I don't think they can score, Omar.
All right.
So I'll say
fumbling in the
I'm
red
saying
zone,
17-10 Washington.
17-10. I am going with a 24-21, a close Dolphins.
3 touchdowns for the Dolphins, who have scored 2 touchdowns in 4 weeks. Now you're very optimistic, Omar.
I think the bye week, their bodies are healthy, they're fresh. I think this is the week you're going to be terrified. I think this is the week we're all going to fear. Well, thank you for watching X's and Omar Kelly, and Dave Hyde. We are here every Wednesday at noon. The segments of the show gets posted around 4 o'clock, and we will share them with you when they arrive. Thank you for watching X's and Omar.